Are we expecting anybody else, to anybody's knowledge? No? Okay. All right, I will start by checking everybody in. Let's see, I have Stephen Hampton.
Yes.
Who are you representing today?
I'm the architect representing the property owner.
Okay. And then I have a KJ.
That's me. I
What's
own,
what's your
I
full?
own, sorry, it's Kyle Jones. I don't know why it was listed that way.
That's all right. And who you're representing?
I own 1235 Ida Street.
All right. And then I have Stephen Vogel.
I'm the director of the Mount Adams Civic Association.
Okay. So here as a community member.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then a B Heckman.
Yes, that's Bill Heckman, and I'm the owner.
Okay. And then I see I have Trey Sheldon from the planning department.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Let me do a brief introduction. This is for my benefit as well as yours. This is the June 4th, 2025 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is Ashton Tucker, and I'll be serving as your zoning hearing examiner today for the city of Cincinnati. I will be presiding over this hearing. The case before us today is application ZH20250044, 1237 Ida. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any other parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any other party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. This hearing will proceed as follows. First, the applicant or the applicant's agents will present their case, and then the public will have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. And then I will have the zoning examiner from the planning department that produced the staff report regarding this application to provide, he can provide any testimony. And in the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony or offer any other argument in opposition. Once that has happened, I will give everybody the opportunity to make a closing statement. The applicant will have the opportunity to be the last word. After all presentations have been made, I'll close this hearing, and then decisions can be expected within 2 weeks or so. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask any questions or to make comments. In the event that we have any technical difficulties, I will try to troubleshoot those as they come about. In the event that it is something that is beyond my ability to troubleshoot, I may continue or postpone this hearing at my discretion. Anybody who intends to testify this afternoon, can you make sure that you are off mute and if you could raise your right hand. All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. We'll start with the applicant. Does anybody want to take the lead here from the applicant side?
Yes, I will.
Okay. What would
All
you
right.
like me to know?
Thank you. So what we have is a new single-family home being built on a site that previously had a home on it. that was demolished a few years ago. So this will be a new build on the site. We are utilizing a little bit of the existing stone foundations in a portion of the site, but that's all below grade. It's in terms of what we're building, it's a 3-story home. It has a basement on the lower level to the rear on the downhill of the slope, to just accommodate the fact that that is a steeply sloping site. Um, we are the examiner or the Trey's report kind of goes through this in detail, but we do comply with all the applicable dimensional requirements outside of the front yard setback, which, because of the adjacent properties, is actually further back than the underlying zoning code. So we actually comply with the underlying zoning code, that is 5 feet. We're actually set back at 5'6", but our average is actually further just due to some of the existing properties adjacent. Um, uh, and then a small section of our, we're barely over on our out of our buildable envelope, again due to the slope and because of the adjacent properties. At its very most, we're only over by 1'9". And that's it's not viewable from the front facade, and with the sloping roof, it's basically not noticeable at all. Our project does follow the slope of the hill. We're stepping it down to match that buildable envelope. We do exceed the cut and fill because of the topography. We're using piers to the extent possible, per the geotechnical report, to make sure that that building is solid and stable, and that we're not cutting more of the hillside than we actually need to. Our actual excavation is not very great, but again, because of the slope, the overall cut and fill average is higher. So that's the third variance that we're looking for there. Other than that, our intent is to be an attractive single-family home that adds to the neighborhood. If you look at the adjacent properties that are on that block, we feel the design, both in aesthetically, but massing and everything else, is very similar to what's there. There's a mix of 100-year-old homes and newer homes, and everything that we're doing is basically matching what's existing on that block. On one of the submitted site sections, I show more than just the adjacent properties and show that that we do, we're very much in similarity to adjacent properties. This project actually was previously approved with a similar footprint back in 2019. That permit was expired and the designs changed slightly, but we're basically doing the same thing that was previously approved. So again, to summarize, new single family home, matching what is adjacent in the neighborhood, and doing everything else in a manner that is as close to the zoning code as possible.
Okay. All right, I'll move on over to Mr. Jones. Anything you'd like me to know, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, something I wanted to bring up was the setback from the street. So I'm curious if that is being measured from my house and the adjacent house on the other side, if that's being measured from the patio or the actual front of the house. As I see it now, it is a short distance from the street, but it extends well past the actual like front of our house. And it seems like that like 1'9" clearance is actually from our patio, not from the front of our house. So there's just a small concern about it just extending well past the actual front doors of my house and the adjacent home's house. And then the only other thing that I was kind of wanting to bring up was just worrying about the depth of the basement compared to the depth of our basement. I had some concerns, even with drilling piers and using the existing foundation. If that basement's going to be lower than ours, that's going to raise some concerns for me. And I do see that there's existing foundation that's being utilized on the, I guess it would be the eastern side or the north side. I'm not directionally aware at this moment, but I see that that foundation is there's quite a bit there, but the foundation that touches our side seems to just be a bit of stone. So I don't know if like how robust of a foundation is actually available there to build off of. And the only last thing I wanted to bring up was that I see it's a 3.5 feet off of our house. And I thought that the code was 5 feet. So I was just curious if there was a reason that that was 3.5 feet instead of 5 feet. If somebody could explain it to me, that was just the only code that I was aware of for that. But those are the couple concerns I just wanted to bring up.
Okay.
I just not
Let
really my
me,
turn. I can
oh,
address
sorry,
some
go
of,
ahead.
later on, sir, I'll try to remember those, what you just said. I jotted it down, but I can address how the building envelope is calculated and things of that nature later, if you'd like.
Yes, that would be great. Let me put a pause on that and move over to Mr. Heckman.
Yes, I don't really have anything to add to what Mr. Hampton presented.
Okay, I can appreciate that. All right. We've heard from Mr. Jones. Let's move over to Mr. Vogel.
Thank you. Just for context here, the only reason I'm asking these questions in this forum is because the Civic Association, we were not approached by the applicant or the architect in advance of receiving the variance hearing notice, which is somewhat unusual. So my questions are, what's publicly available or certainly did not pop up in the docs was, who is the geotechnical engineer and what have they said about foundation work, please?
Who are you asking me?
I'm asking Mr. Hampton. He'll know that answer. Who is your geotechnical engineer, Mr. Hampton?
Yep, getting there. Give me a second. It's Civil Solutions Associates.
Okay. And going to what Mr. Jones was asking, what have they said about securing the foundations of the two adjoining structures? Because of course they are in very close proximity to your excavation work.
I have to go through the report here. But in a short answer, we're not excavating because of the way the basement steps. In the front half of the building, there is no basement. The only basement is in the rear half of the building where the site is already sloping down and there is already an exposed wall for both properties on either, both to the north and to the south. So basically, we're kind of matching the properties on either side in terms of that. In terms of going below grade, again, the piers are doing the vast majority of the work there. So those are drilled piers. So there's not open excavation. Those are drilled and poured. So there's never like an open excavation where we need to retain anything for that. The bit of walls that we do have again are approximately should not be going any deeper than the adjacent properties for any of our foundation walls. We'll bring the piers up to a point and then do grade beams, which are basically concrete beams spanning on top of those to pick up any of our new framing. So short answer, our intent is not to go below either the adjacent basements with our construction.
Are you building on any of your foundation is going to be built on the existing foundations that exist there? Because we're well familiar with this building. There was a demolition order that was entered against it 5 or 6 years ago. Mr. Heckman will remember that. And so the city did that, of course, under instance of the neighbors who were in the association. We worked on this for 10 years before that was done. But the foundation walls would have been addressed partly in that demolition. And so our question just is to make certain that nothing that was done there or whatever was done with respect to the demolition of the existing wall that was left in place when the house was originally demolished. There was the north facing wall brick wall was left and secured by a seal superstructure until the city ordered that to be demolished. That none of that work, or that work, has been anticipated by your geotechnical work and yourself, Mr. Hampton?
Yes, and again, there's only a small portion of the new building that's being supported on those walls. And considering the fact that those walls supported brick construction previously, were very similar type of loading condition. Again, it's really only a small portion of the new building that's being supported on that, and that would be all the foundations that are below grade. So they're 18-inch thick stone walls. So yeah, there's no issue with reusing those for that small portion of the house.
I take it from Mr. Jones' questions, though, that the two adjoining property owners weren't contacted to have this project discussed with them in advance of the applications?
I was not.
Pardon me?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I mean, it's academic, but when we're working in a area, particularly again when the owner would know about the interests of the adjoining property owners previously, it would have been a nice gesture to be able to discuss with them what's going to happen, and particularly in a construction site that will be an ongoing matter for a year and a half.
Can I address that? This is Bill Heckman. We originally had plans approved in 2018, I believe, when my wife and I purchased the property and did the demolition. At that time, I had extensive conversations with both neighbors. Because of personal reasons, we delayed the project and decided to reboot it just recently. And I don't really understand all the processes for approval. I didn't know that I thought, since it was approved before, it would be just a matter of re-upping. I didn't know we were going to, have a zoning meeting, so I didn't think to contact the adjacent owners.
Okay.
So
you.
sorry, apologize for that. I'm just not familiar with the process.
No apologies. It's just that's from a standpoint of working up here and getting all these things done. It's actually in everyone's interest that goes on that way. So,
For what
but I have no further questions.
Okay, for what it's worth, we do send out notifications to all adjacent / nearby properties once we know that a hearing will be scheduled. I realize you mean prior to the hearing.
Yes.
But that's
when the applications are submitted.
Yeah.
It's
I understand.
Yeah.
I'll move over to the planning department. Mr. Sheldon, what would you like me to know about this staff report and the recommendations by your office?
Well, I'll try to generally explain it, especially for Mr. Jones' benefit, as far as how the maximum building envelope is determined. So let's start with that. You have a choice when you're calculating the maximum building envelope in the hillside of choosing either the measurement of 35 feet, which is the allowable height at the midpoint of a normal like gabled roof, or you have the opportunity to use the height of either of the adjacent properties if the roof exceeds 35 feet in height. And so by doing so, for example, let's say that somebody had, I know this is not, this would be out of character in Mount Adams, but let's say there's just a ranch house or a simple Cape Cod, only 2 stories. It's maybe only 25 feet tall, or maybe even only 15 or 16. It would not then penalize the one person having to have a much smaller structure than base zoning would allow that. So I hope that makes sense. So part of, I believe it would be your house, I guess, to the right there has part of the roof is flat, and so you're able to measure to the flat when something's a mansard roof or has any kind of flat part of the roof, the code directs us to measure to that point, or to the when gabled roofs to the midpoint of any of the highest gable, and on pitched roofs, they're like a shed roof. We also use the midpoint of that, which would be applicable to the subject property's design. So that's how the building envelope's calculated. And it's calculated upward from the existing grade of the property at the front building line and the rear building line. Now, as to the front setback, things like uncovered porches or landings are considered to be they're not calculated in the measurement of where the front of the building is. But when things are covered over, so for example, in the case of the neighbor to the left of this, when there are covered porches, or in this case, there's even looks like an upstairs terrace up there, and in your case, a projecting porch, those can be are calculated into, those are considered part of the facade, not a complete projection. So that's how the setback aspect of the maximum building envelope is calculated. In this instance, you average the two of them, and your house is set back, further than, for example, if you look down the street to the south, a lot of the newer homes that were built there are probably at about 5 feet from the front of the property, and that's what base zoning allows for a 5-foot setback. In this instance, your house is back some from that, so the front yard average is determined by averaging the two properties. It came out to about 7 feet 10, I believe. I have to look at my report. 7 feet 4 was the average setback there. So they're asking that for relief of 1 foot 10 inches from that average front setback to allow a front yard setback of 5.5 feet rather than the base zoning of 5. As to excavation and fill, and overall the hillside guidelines, the hillside standards encourage stepping. That goes back all the way to the early hillside report from 1986, which really encouraged any development in the hillside to step down with the hillside in both the foundation and if possible with the part of the roof line too. And this project does accomplish both of those. It also minimizes excavation by utilizing drilled piers and by utilizing to the extent possible, the existing foundations. And I'm looking at Street View right now, and it seems to me that tearing those foundations out, the older ones that have been secured, this is, I'm not a geotechnical engineer, but I have been doing this for 10 years, so not my first rodeo. This certainly appears to me that if you started removing all of that existing foundation in there, that it could laterally destabilize the adjacent properties. It's the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That you really tinkering around with that with these older homes could cause far worse problems by not utilizing them or incorporating them into the design. At least from what I've seen over many years of reviewing plans. So the project, as Mr. Hampton stated, it also has a basement only in the back, roughly the back 50% of it. So the front only requires a small bit, a minimal amount of fill there in the front just to bring it level for the garage slab. And then, so in that sense, if you can, it's in my staff report, there's a image, a section drawing that Mr. Hampton did that pretty clearly illustrates the stepping both into the hill, which is really the minimum that you could do, because he's utilizing both stepping and the drilled piers. And then and back in the day, instead of drilled piers, somebody would have tried to go probably would have tried to go, the 50s or 60s or something, past the time of these stone foundations. They would have tried to go way down and dig trenches in there and put big spread foundations, spread footers as they call them. But here, with the advent of drilled piers, you're able to carry that weight by having a pier that's drilled right down in and goes down and hits the limestone layer in our cope formation here, and stabilize without digging out as much. So that's what's happening here. as far as stepping up above this house, does cant back so that from the front, at the front of it, it's got a bit of a, even though it's a modern house, it's got a bit of a feel that will, I think, fit a little with the house there. It's got a parapet, or Steve could explain it better, but it's got kind of a parapet roof section on the very front of it to kind of give it a little bit of a older feel to it instead of being, starkly modern. And once from that parapet part's completely compliant with the MBE, and then the roof from there is a shed roof that pitches to the back, and then it drops to enable a rear like a roof deck or terrace in the back. So you imagine the profile of it, sloping slowly backwards with the hill, and then dropping and stepping down. So only a small amount of relief was, if you look at the image, either in my staff report or Mr. Hampton, if he wants to do summation here after this, he can provide that image. I'm trying to see in my staff report. I have it. It's figure 7 in my staff report, but it shows about a 1 foot 9 inch part of the roof, just a sliver of it essentially that is outside of the maximum building envelope. So it's a comparatively small ask in that regard. And I do note that the back part, since it's going to be a terrace for the back part of the house, it will, you'll be able to see through that. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I would
Thank
say
you.
you're referring to this figure?
Yes, you can see the shaded area at the very top. That's the part that's outside the building envelope.
Okay,
And then that drops at that point, as you can see, it then drops where they've got a roof, like a roof deck in the back, where they can, go out on like a patio out in the back. So that reduces the massing of it. So you could see that essentially this building steps down with the hillside, both in its foundation and, in its roof massing. And that's what we're generally speaking, what we're wanting folks to do. Over the years of me doing this, I have had very few properties, usually when they have a fairly mild slope, where they did not need at least zoning relief for the excavation and fill. It's almost impossible in like a place like Mount Adams to have any kind of lower, not only just habitable space, but able to build the foundations down on once the slope that's a certain degree or percentage, it's pretty much impossible to meet the 8 feet limit. I mean, I've probably a dozen times in my years of reviewing projects have I seen somebody be able to build without needing relief for the excavation and fill. So here they're stepping it. They only have the basement in the rear part. You can see the piers in the back, existing stone foundations being used up in the front. And so from a zoning standpoint, they're pretty much doing exactly what we would want them to do. It's just that to have that third floor, the roof pitch needs a bit of relief, that 1 foot 9 inches of relief for that sliver. So if anybody has any, that's about it on my end. If anybody has any questions for me further, I'd be glad to answer.
all right, so there has been some back and forth between what I'll say is the public side of this versus the applicant side of this. What I'll do now is I will give the public a final opportunity to ask any additional questions based off of what they've heard thus far. We'll start with Mr. Jones.
I'll try and keep this brief. I'd just like to extend the continuous concern. So I actually come from a family of architects, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of this stuff. I do understand that drilling those piers, those pillars is going to be better than obviously excavating down to limestone. But I just want to air the concern that, even taking an auger and drilling that deep into the earth this close to these older homes, this still raises a lot of concerns with me. I don't know if there's other homes in the area that maybe you could point to that have done similar things in recent years. And this is speaking just from, what I've noticed in the neighborhood. It seems like a lot of houses have been like updated. And maybe if Mr. Vogel can weigh in on this, but I don't know how many houses have been completely demolished and then rebuilt in this fashion, this close to these other homes. And I may have missed it when you were speaking on this, but I don't know if we addressed that 3.5 foot gap as it not being 5 feet, and if that's something I'm still confused about. And then, you know, uh, it's tough to understand from these drawings, but one of the things that drew us to wanting to purchase in this neighborhood was sort of the old charm of all these homes. And, I'm a modern man. I understand, modern taste. But there is, still looking to uphold that integrity of the other local architecture. I understand that it is to a certain extent following what else has been done on the street. It is sandwiched between two houses that were built well over 100 years ago. So if it does present, I don't know what the fit and finishes are on the exterior, but I did just want to, air a small bit of concern over if it is looking to lean more modern than it is sort of a vintage aesthetic that's present in the other homes. And I am a recent home buyer, but to echo what Mr. Vogel said, just being informed of this stuff, just as, a formality to sort of just discuss it, just would have been appreciated, or maybe we can do it at some point later. We have things that we'd like to do to our house, and we just have no idea what's going on next door. One day an excavator just shows up, and the next thing we're here in this meeting. So, but yeah, those are the last concerns I just wanted to air. So thank you.
I can't answer the one question about the side
Yeah,
setbacks.
sure, that's actually what
okay.
I was going to ask.
I forgot, sorry, I didn't get that. So, the base zoning is, you have like a 0 and a 5, requirement. So someone can choose 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in any combination thereof. So you could have one side be 5 and one side be 0. That's for the base zoning. However, in the maximum building envelope, you calculate the setbacks like the left setbacks of both of the houses. So like L1 and L2 for both the adjacent houses, and then like R1 and R2 and what those are. And then you divide by 2. So that's how Mr. Hampton was coming up with his setback requirements. Does that make sense? He's averaging literally the maximum building envelope measures height at the front and rear proposed, and then it measures rear setback, front setback, and both side setbacks based on a comp. Like it's if you took the measurements for the two adjacent properties, added them together and divided by 2. And that's how you come up with them. So that's how he's coming up with something less than 5 on the, I believe you're talking about the right side, on the side facing you.
Correct, and I can only assume that them touching the other house is something that was agreed upon back, like I think what he mentioned in 2019.
Hang on, I was trying to see it. It's like,
I
No,
can jump
it's-
in and clarify if you like. It's 0 lot line on the north side,
okay,
and
that's it.
technically it would be 0 in terms of what's allowable. The adjacent properties on both sides are 0 lot lines on each side. So per Trey's explanation, the average is 0. So by right, we would be able to build to both lot lines. We're holding that back 3'6" on the main body of the house so that we can maintain some windows there. 3 foot is the residential building code that we have a minimum distance to have windows. So we're sending that 3'6" back to allow us to have a handful of windows on that face. But yeah, by right, we would be able to, technically it would be 0, 0 on the side yard setbacks.
All right.
Does that make sense, sir? That
I'm sorry,
the other, making sure Mr. Jones understood the other two properties, the 1235 and 1239 Ida, both have outer walls that extend all the way to the extent of the property. So there is no setback for either one of those, so they're providing the 3.5 feet in order to allow this house to have some windows on it instead of just build all the way to the lot line or have just a stark side with no window features at all.
I'll move on over to Mr. Vogel for any final questions or comments.
Let me first qualify that the Civic Association has no objections to this application. If I could make a couple comments though to the owner and the architect, once you start your work from a good neighborly standpoint in Mount Adams, we would like you to expeditiously continue and then finish. I'm only saying this on the basis of experience where we have been involved, because the city's regulatory process does not apply to this. So it has to be on the basis of cooperation of the owner and the building contractors, particularly. When you start, please finish. No dramatic pauses for changes, because Ida Street is an important vehicle conduit in Mount Adams. Stretches, it connects into Eden Park, goes to the museum. Traffic is coming by to go up to the Playhouse, which you are directly below. I'm anticipating, of course, that there will be construction equipment on the street. It's taking away parking for the other residents. So there is a dramatic influence on the surrounding neighborhoods when these houses are built. And that's just a fact of life. We understand that. But if we have cooperation on both sides, that imposition both on adjoining owners and on the surrounding neighborhood can be reduced. And that's a factor that we just ask the owner and builder to deal with, because the city does not deal with that itself. So with that comment, again, we have no objection to the application.
Thank you. All right, and as I said, the applicant will have the last word. We'll start with Mr. Hampton.
Thank you. I know there were a couple of things brought up that I haven't directly addressed yet, so I'll try to quickly address those. Mr. Jones, you mentioned the aesthetics. Yeah, as you know, there's a mix of 100-year-old homes and modern homes on that block. We trying to strike a good compromise with that. With the design, there is no aesthetic requirements in any of the codes. We're not in a historic district or anything, but in terms of material massing, we hopefully are have a design that'll be a good addition to the neighborhood. We talked about the side yard setback, I believe. Again, to reiterate on the foundations and the stone walls, a couple points were brought up. Mr. Sheldon brought up a good point that reminded me that, again, yes, reusing the existing stone walls allows us to not have to excavate against both properties, or minimizes that. If you look, our proposed basement is not any lower. In fact, maybe slightly higher than the basement in your property and the property on the other side. And so we're not digging down below anything that either property has, with the extent of the piers. Piers are done a lot. I mean, in Cincinnati, we have a lot of hills, so I can certainly get some examples of other houses that I'm not sure which contractor, which subcontractor, the general contractor has lined up for that. We can certainly provide you with some examples to talk to them, but this is something that's done all over the place, and it's safe, and it's done a lot, but it's much easier and much less disruptive than digging big holes. So happy to try to coordinate that information with you if you like more of that on specifics, but it's something that's done all over in this city, and the contractors that do it are reputable. These are definitely not a guy with a pickup truck and a backhoe. So looking at my notes here, I think that's kind of thing, everything. I do believe from the general contractor is ready to go. All the other approvals have been approved at the city level, so I believe we intend to move on this very quickly in terms of starting construction and completing it. But to reiterate on the overall project, again, what we're providing is something that's similar in scope and scale to other properties on the block, both old and new, especially the new ones that have been approved most recently. We feel it's a good compromise that works well for the site and for the adjacent properties, and the variances are very minimal that we're asking for to allow this home to be built.
And then Mr. Heckman.
Yes, thank you. I just have a couple of comments. One, I appreciate everyone's time and consideration to this. And Ms. Tucker, I appreciate your thoughtful consideration here. Mr. Vogel, I understand your comments about the location. We understand it's a busy street and we don't want to be as less disruptive as possible. Just want to let you know that your comments are noted. And then Mr. Jones, a couple of things. One, happy to get with you. Sorry I didn't get with you beforehand. Ownership changed since we first started this project, number one. And then number two, the property that was existing was demolished because there was structural failure to the prop. There was an addition that was added onto the house that was pulling on the house. And so there was not an opportunity to renovate or even consider that at that point. So just to get a little history on the property. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, I'm going to thank everybody for their attention and testimony today. I really appreciate everybody taking the time out to talk to me about this. What will happen now is I'm going to take all of this under advisement and I will issue a decision. Again, this should take me hopefully within the next 2 weeks to get a formal decision out to everybody. Everybody who is called currently will get a copy of that decision. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.